The president is expected to tour Kisii this week for development projects. All right. In studio, I'm joined by three guests. That is Wakili George Kivi. How are you doing?
Fine. Good morning and good morning, Kenya.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
And also Honorable Mark Dingo. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Yes.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also Gerald Minishi, political analyst. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah. What do you think of the performance of Team Kenya during the Olympics?
It's interesting. It's a great day in the history of Kenya because I think it's like a kind of resurgence because Africa-wise, I think we were the top. So I feel like this has made Kenya proud. It has lifted the flag of Kenya high, and I think it's highly commendable to our men and women. Yeah.
Honorable Mark, where do you think we may improve in terms of sporting activities so that we can get a better chance of getting more medals in Olympics and major sports events across the globe?
Thank you, Migwi. I think I will start by maybe congratulating our team, which did a wonderful job at the Olympics. Though there are some areas we need to improve on the part of steeplechase, both women and men. We need to plan well and do a lot of homework because what happened in those games, you'll find Ethiopia, Uganda is also coming up. So I think it's a high time we regained our glory in the steeplechase. And one area I think we need to improve on is on the selection of the team, because many times you'll find the people, the runners selected are not the finest. So I think if we can have an accountability in the way we select the team, that can really improve on the performance. Yeah.
Maybe, Wakili, even when we are selecting the team, there's stiff competition in terms of who represents Kenya where. And also, if you look at the Olympics this year, especially when it comes to marathon, our star in terms of gold was not shining, but still the team performed. What do you think of the general performance?
Well, first, congratulations to our athletes, those who are ambassadors. The sovereignty of a nation, the marketing of the nation, the standing of the people of Kenya and any other country depends on how globally perception is made, and is made by the people. So there'll be good news and bad news for every nation. There'll be news about politics, but sports too. That's why sports is taken seriously in the global arena. And it's not just the money aspect, it's more about the sovereignty of the country. And we continue to challenge, of course, our athletes out there, but the good things that they do for this country. But then, obviously, the bad behavior of Kenyans in officialdom executing their duties has been one issue after the other. I know the dust has not settled, many things haven't come out. But what has come out is that there's a problem, still an endemic problem, perpetual problem we have. There's a young girl who I think ran by Ren. Yeah. Supposed to be Kenyan. The rumor is, I may not be true, it may be true, but suspiciously true, that she had been asked to pay 200,000 to be included in the team, 200,000 Kenya shillings. I think it was Yemi, right? And she conquered the world at the Olympics. She ran very well. She's not from the traditional region of the athletes that we have here. But I think that's also to say we should stop suspecting that those that are good from other places, other than the traditional areas, cannot make it. And of course, she changed nationality in her quest to the podium, and she did it. The other issue is, I think we must be bold enough to say, time to exit for some of us or some of the athletes. It's time to exit, because I don't think it was a shame to have the normal contestants being there. But it was obvious from the preceding marathon contest that our good brother was not good enough. It's time to hang the boots. I don't know why he kept on going. In any event, he could have been paired up with others. The time to conquer is gone. And there's an end, a beginning and end to everything. It can be too long not to have an end to it. So I do think that we read it wrong, especially for the marathon. We were dethroned when we shouldn't. To be honest, that race was not very fast, looking at how we run our marathons. So yes, time to learn, but of course there's 4 years again to be back. We can still nurture. We are not short of any talents in athletics. Again, I do not think we have all that we have that we take to the Olympics. There must be a way in which we can compensate those that we can't take, so that we don't lose them, because we keep on losing athletes who compete against their own nation out there, on account of the fact that we have probably so much talent that we can't accommodate it. How innovative we can be to be able to cure that would be very important. It's obvious that we can take as many people as we want, because the slots are also limited at the Olympics and World Forums. But again, there must be a way in which, either locally or for international organized forums, even in Africa, we can compensate those that have talents, but they could provide that elsewhere. That threat is imminent and available. But I don't think we are schooled enough in that respect, because we lose our doctors, we lose our other professionals with abandon, because we don't probably have the pride to accommodate them where we are. So it's something that needs an introspection of sorts. I'm probably trying to settle the bad and continue with the good.
Yes, definitely. Now, let's get into politics. A lot happened over the weekend, one of which is Kalonzo, Wamalwa, and Kioni vowing not to join the government, and also talking about betrayal by the ODM. Also, Gachagua was with the president in Kirinyaga over the weekend, where he told MPs to stay in their lane and try not to confuse the people from Mount Kenya on matters that concern the nation, and also the aspect of politics of Meru. Kawira Mwangaza, for a third time, she was impeached. And this time she was accused of gross violation of the Constitution, violation of the national and county laws, and abuse of office. All that happened over the weekend. But one of the things I would want us to open with is the first story on the page, or on Standard, why your voice may not matter. When the President William Ruto announced a new set of ministers, more than 1,300 memorandums were sent to Parliament, out of which 187 were admitted, but even then the reservations of Kenyans about the executive were not taken into account during vetting by MPs. Let me start with you, Minishi. What do you think of that, in as far as the aspect of public participation is concerned?
Thank you, Mike. Matters of public participation have been something that we have raised our voices and have not been heard for long. It's not just this regime. Remember that Kenya is a closed political system, and since we are a closed political system and a third world country in that case, there are rarely checks and balances in our system. So it's very sad that even when you look at the CS who are later on reappointed, it's very sad because those who had been dismissed, a majority of them also made up to the final list of the newly appointed cabinet secretaries. Now my question is, does it mean that in the entirety of Kenya there are no qualified personnel, qualified individuals who can head those government ministries? Absolutely no. Our problem has always been ethnopolitics. We are championing politics of religion, ethnicity, and all sorts, and it has really affected us in so many ways, the issues of bad governance, corruption, etc. And this is something that, has angered most Kenyans. And that's why you see the sporadic Nane protests which come in weekly, which are threatening to destabilize our political system. So I feel like we need more checks and balances. The president is not necessarily about changing leaders or trying to bring to form a broad-based government by accommodating the opposition, it is about competency. Competency and appointing individuals who are going to be responsible for their actions in government. And so I feel like we are still punching below our weight. We have not reached there, but I believe that if the president, and not just the president, all from the judiciary, the executive, and even the parliament, if they can only listen to the common mwananchi, they can put their ears to the ground, I believe that then we can transform this country. Thank you.
Honorable Mark, what do you think of this? More than 1,300 memorandums were sent to Parliament and only 187 were admitted. Is public participation, has it become a formality? Just a formality?
I mean, the 2010 Constitution gave the mwananchi more power to participate in national building. Mm-hmm. And many times, I think we've gone to our people, asked for votes, and every time we are elected, we tend to forget the reasons why we are supposed to be elected in the first place. When you look at the memorandum which was given to the National Assembly, mm-hmm.
You'll find
15%, only 15% supported the nominated CSEs, and the rest, 85%, said no to the nominated CSEs. Now that tells us that if we were to follow, we were to hear, or we were to go by the submissions, the whole lot should have been rejected. But what happened is something I think which is going to have some repercussions in the way we run things. Because for one, you'll find these are CSEs who are approved by the National Assembly against the wishes of most Kenyans. And the issue of trust will arise again, because if you appoint somebody who has no, who has less public approvals, that person will not even perform his duties as required. And if he performs, there will always be the issue of trust. So I think the events of 25th June was something which could have given us a good start for our country. But I think we moved one step forward and two steps backward. So what I think is we are still on where we were before 25th. Yes, the president dissolved the cabinet, but he managed to return the same cabinet with less than some few who are rejected. So I think, Mr. Migwi, we have a big problem with the leadership. We have a problem with accountability. Our leaders are failing the mwananchi because we don't want to listen to what they are saying. And moving forward, I think we need to have a conversation whereby we need to have leaders who can listen to our people. And this goes back to how we vote. So I think it's a conversation which is going to continue. And our eyes are to the president to see whether he's going to change, whether he's going to take this opportunity and do things in a different way from how he has been running the country.
All right. Wakili, I want to hear your sentiments on this, and also to what extent does these affidavits from public participation count in as far as vetting and making decisions by the committee in the parliament is concerned?
Article 118 of the Constitution prescribes that Parliament must consider the public views in the context of public participation in making its decisions, and that's why they called the public opinions in regard to the selection
Yes.
and nomination influencing the decision. Now, we do not have a legislation on public participation and the content of public participation, to what extent the public should be allowed to participate. Is it sectoral? Is it interested parties only? Is it the entire public? Number two is, even if we did that, there is no, again, content of law that directs Parliament on what to consider and what not to consider, and therefore there's absolute discretion, completely unfettered discretion on part of Parliament on how they should conduct and take views, and what views to take into consideration and what not to take into consideration. The context of public participation in that area is a friction in the two parts of Article 1, which prescribes direct democracy, where parties, where Kenyans can exercise the sovereignty directly, and also representative democracy, where they send representatives to Parliament to act on their behalf, basically agents, they're agents. Now, when people have been sent to Parliament, basically members of Parliament are agents, just like you would send an agent to look for a property of land for you. They go there, but they have specific statutory and constitutional powers that have been clothed with them. One of it, obviously, is to legislate. The other is oversight and, of course, representation. At legislation, they are called upon to take the same views of the people who have sent them to represent them. When they're there, they act, therefore, according to the law and in an ideal situation, at the whim of the people, the voice of the people, and they come from there, having been sent to speak for the people. The people can congregate together. You can't have Samburus, Maasais, Taitas, or in one place and start talking. We won't listen to each other. But reducing those voices into agents to be sent to talk on behalf of the people is basically the circumstance of democracy. However, when they get there, there are other issues that come into play. For instance, they are sponsored by political parties, and those political parties have a bearing on the business of the day. Number two is they have their own personal interest, and obviously in a context of survival for the fittest in an environment where everybody has to survive, the person in person represents probably more reason to survive than the public. So personal interest therefore varied over public interest, and then some of them have worked with them. They've been friends, and therefore there's a lot of partnership bias, and they're not judges. They don't make decisions like judges will sit and weigh on what are the facts are, what's the legality and a law to prescribe. No, they do it on issues that are not necessarily anchored in law. So there is probably a lot of unchecked power there, and that's what I call it absolute discretion. When that happens, and the absolute discretion in the numbers that they are in, is a committee or a committee of the entire house, or whatever it is, then they coalesce into a collective psyche of the environment, the contextual environment. For instance, is it raising their salaries? Is it about increasing their, their compensation for the distance that they travel, that compensation, or whatever it is? When it comes to issues such as these, they know the truth. Not like they do not know that. They will always know the truth.
Yes.
They will even have access to the memorandum sent by the public ordinarily. If they want to do the right thing, they will do it. But the convenience of the time is such they take into consideration many other issues. Remember, the executive has an interest in having those names passed. There's the political also merger of issues. For instance, in this context, the opposition donates to the government. And therefore, you don't expect the opposition to check on the government in that context. Yeah. And in that situation, therefore, we have it passing. Now, if again you come to the public, its role does not stop there. Yeah. There was an appointment by the president of one chairman of the KRA.
Oh, okay.
The court said, notwithstanding that he was allowed to take the position and even serve,
yes,
the fact that he was facing certain issues with the courts in matters economic crimes, he cannot have been the designated person at that time, the right designated person to have been vetted by Parliament and therefore take the position. Consequently, therefore, with that precedent, we are saying they can, of course, allow them with the absolute discretion they have and the politics that they play at that time, because it's a political process. But of course, when the public goes to court, we expect the courts, again, as checkers of the executive and the legislative assembly or the legislature, to be able to pronounce itself on these issues. So yes, it is good for the country that it needs to move on. In any event, we cannot micromanage the president on how he runs the country. It's just that there is a way you get into government, and there is a way you can also get out of government. In the context of the application of law.
Let's take a short break, and we'll still talk about that aspect of public participation, the absolute discretion, but we'll do that after this short break. Don't go too far. "37 minutes past the hour." You are watching Eye on Politics here on Good Morning Kenya. My name is Mike Migwe. And before we went on a break, we were talking about public participation and the aspect of absolute discretion on these matters. And let me get it from you, Bwana Minishi. Why is it important that we should have a strong anchor in law on matters public participation, to ensure that whatever the public says counts in government decision-making processes?
Thank you, Mike. First of all, I'd like to reiterate the fact that we are a democratic country, and since we are a democratic country, there are some democratic ideals that we need to embed, in as far as our constitution is concerned. So among them, for example, the issue about accountability and transparency, and specifically in this case, the issue about public participation. It is important that we encourage public participation, because when you look even, for example, the Public Finance Management Act and the public accountability, it is very sad that we don't put all this into consideration, especially when we are either formulating these laws, or enacting these bills. So it's very important, because the Constitution says that the sovereign power belongs to the people, Article 1 of the Kenyan Constitution. And we need to exercise that, not necessarily in a kind of, for example, the people trying to bulldoze the government, but we need just to have that balance. The government listening to the people, and the people giving also the government the time to implement necessary measures and policies.
Now, Honorable Mark, the Parliament, one of the roles is oversight and also representation. And representation also should include what the public is saying concerning some matters. What do you think the Parliament should do to ensure that we have a strong anchor of public participation aspect in law?
Thank you. I think public participation has always been used as a formality in both in national government and in the county governments. And what has always lacked, I think, is the lack of policy guidelines on how public participation should be carried out. And I think one thing which makes it difficult to have the public participation law, I think is the goodwill, the political goodwill, because if the 2010 Constitution gives the public more power on how the government runs its activities, I think we need to have we need to have a way of how we can anchor this in the law, because if you look at the current situation, whenever we are making laws, And you have said the National Assembly, where we have the MPs, their mandate is to oversight, legislate, and represent the people. And when we go to the public and get their views, and we fail to put those views into consideration, then it beats the purpose of representing the people. So I think we need to have a way of how we can have it anchored in the law, because it has been an issue both in the national government and the county government. And the way it is done nowadays is it has become a formality. You get a case of county government when it wants to pass some laws. You'll find they'll advertise for the public participation for maybe 1 or 2 days. And in those public participation forums, you'll find very few people. And what happens, they get the views, but once the views are gotten from the public, you'll find in most cases what is going to be passed is a different set of things from what the public gave. So I think we need to have it anchored in law so that we can improve on issues to do with accountability and transparency. Because we can't claim, the leaders can't claim to be representing the people while at the same time they are not taking into consideration their views. So I think it's an issue we need to have it being thought about, because if in a situation where we continue the current way of doing things, it will always be the purpose of electing people, because we'll have representatives who are doing their things, and we'll have the public who will be giving their views, which are never considered. So I think it's an issue which needs to be considered, and our MPs and the executive should move fast and have these laws anchored into the Constitution. Yeah.
Of course, matters to do with the public participation, especially when it comes to public offices, is mostly dealing with matters of suitability and accountability of the nominees to hold office. But in this case, for instance, in the vetting of the CSs, the president dismissed the cabinet, and also he said that it was after a reflection, listening to Kenyans, and after a holistic appraisal. Does the public participation aspect in this case really achieve a holistic appraisal in these matters, Wakili?
Well, first, for the benefit of public, there is a public participation bill that's still in the pipeline towards crystallizing into a law. But the space in which we operate now is without a guided legislation on the same. It has been a fundamental problem, especially before the courts. I've seen very good pieces of legislation, by the way, made by governments, not just this government, even previous governments. But when they come to court, they're declared unconstitutional on account of the lack of depth in public participation, or in the alternative, completely ignoring to compromise on public participation. But this is the position in law as far as we are concerned, at least as of 31st of July this year, when the Court of Appeal pronounced itself on the same. The context is public participation is mandatory under Article 118 for anything, any legislative process. And why this is important is because when we were enacting and putting into place the Constitution, the debate was the folly of Parliament. It appeared that Parliament, being a representative of the people, was the weakest link in democracy, in our democracy, for the reason that when it gets there, it is adulterated by other partisan issues, as opposed to the Puritan approach to legislation and the voice of the people. So it stopped being the voice of the people. So we introduced Article 1 to be able to give the people the sovereign power and over Parliament. So people can override Parliament. Mm-hmm. That is one. Number two, and then to give power to Article 1, and it is Article 1 for a reason, the subsequent articles mirrored on the people's power, including Article 118, where when legislating, notwithstanding that we've sent you to represent our views, you come back to the people again to listen to them before you legislate, because the suspicion we had, and we enacted under something called the mischief rule in legislative and legislative drafting, where you look at the mischief that we need to cure or prevent from happening, which is that members of parliament made laws that at times were completely antithetical to society. For instance, if you say a person can be detained without trial, and this law has lived in this country and been used as a legal instrument, you see, that's wrong. And you have therefore to come and ask us again on the legislation and whether we want the law. And then we tell you. Those are our views, and that's Article 118 on public participation. When you go and you continue with your bad behavior or good behavior, whatever you are doing, without listening or putting into consideration the views that we put into place, it means therefore you bastardize what the people have done. You vulgarize the entire Article 118 and give it no meaning whatsoever, like happened probably in this vetting. So what the Court of Appeal said is this in its holding, and which ought to be a normal view of whoever is in power, that when you have received memorandum from the people on account of any legislation, you have the discretion not to put it into account. That absolute discretion is there except checked by the fact that you then have to account for it. We received 100, 200 memoranda from the people. The context was rejection on this and this and this. Their views were as follows. Mm-hmm. And then the Court of Appeal mandated Parliament to then explain why the consideration and the views were not put into consideration. If you do not do that, you therefore have vulgarized the participation of the people. Yeah. And in the context, therefore, you make your result, the resultant legislation, as a piece that is unconstitutional. Like we say in law, that the process is as good as the objective result. And we say procedure is the handmaiden of substance. Whatever comes out as the substance must have followed the procedure. It means, therefore, if a person has stolen and you take him to committee directly, you have done the right thing. Obviously, he stole and he has to go to jail. But he has to be arrested, go to court, and a determination made that he goes to committee. And the procedure, therefore, will have been followed. But you can't just take him to jail. Meaning you can't just turn him to kill him for whatever he has done. He has to get it to account and account for through a process. Mm-hmm. And therefore, the process of legislation means take into account the people's views and then also comment on them. Like we had, if you have 10,000, say of all the 10,000, we saw this will be unconstitutional if followed, or this will lead to hardships, economic hardships, we can't put this budget for this, and so on and so forth. And that then crystallizes the operationability of Article 118 as opposed to what we've seen as the norm, where, yes, with absolute discretion in legislation, of course, nobody can supervise them, as at the time that they're making this, the conduct legislation. It is that they ought then to give reasons and account for their actions, which is accountability. Yeah. So 118, the result is it must be accounted for, the people's views must be accounted for, and that's the principle of accountability in the Constitution. Yes. Yes.
All right, that is interesting. Let's look at another aspect. The president, for the first time in 2 months, left the country yesterday to go to inauguration of President Paul Kagame in Rwanda. And if you look at those 2 months, the president has not left the country. And he has been engaging with ambassadors, high commissioners, and representatives of, or members of the diplomatic corps. Has it served, or is it proving that austerity measures are possible to put in place and actually outside or international travel does not need to happen as often as the president was used to going out. Let me start with you.
Thank you, Mike. First of all, we are in the world of diplomacy and in the powers of the president, there is something called presidential diplomacy. So, first of all, presidential diplomacy is not bad. Whether it's shuttle diplomacy or presidential diplomacy, it's not bad in this case. The justification of President Ruto, I think he said that to justify his trips that he was trying, to advance the economic prosperity of Kenyans, which is also in alignment with the Kenya's foreign policy document. However, the question has majorly been about the accountability aspect of it and, misappropriation of funds. For example, you have said that regarding the statement that you have said that Ruto going to the inauguration of President Kagame in Rwanda, it's not bad. We cannot necessarily say that we have come at a place where now the president has taken very staunch austerity measures, to manage public expenditure. I cannot comment on that because maybe the reason why maybe he was in Kenya for these 2 months, it is because of the heightened protests that have been happening in Kenya. But we are not necessarily sure that this now will carry along, up to the end of his term. But just to go back now to the issue about managing, our expenditure and living within our means, I feel like, yes, majority of the role that the president is doing, he can dedicate that to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Remember President Kibaki's administration when he domesticated the economic Bible and how he vested so much power to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. The same also came with the President Uhuru Kenyatta, who vested much authority to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So most of these trips that he wants to do, these executive trips, he can try to at least delegate, if not at least more than half of those trips to cut on those budget costs. Then regarding his ministers, he can constantly do appraisal report on his ministers, and he should not be afraid, to put someone aside when they misbehave. Yeah, thank you.
So, Bwana Mark, outside travel, only when necessary, is that possible given the current economic situation?
The president is a representative of the people of Kenya.
Yes.
When you are elected to represent the people in home affairs and international affairs. And traveling by itself is not bad, but it becomes an issue when you overdo it. If you look at the current president, since he was elected in 2022, he has traveled every month outside the country. And many times, he has done it 3 times within a month. And for a country which is claiming to have a lot of debts to pay, I think traveling for 3 times in a month would be a problem to Kenyans. And that's why you saw the Gen Z and even other Kenyans raised the issue of the president traveling too much. And if you compare the previous 2 presidents, that is President Mwai Kibaki and President Uhuru, President Ruto was going to beat them within even the first time, if it were not for the voices of the Gen Z. So I think we need to be honest to our people and do what we say, because if you say the government is going to have some austerity measures, and you keep on breaking them by going around the globe, that now beats the logic of why now we're having the austerity measures. So I think traveling by itself is not bad, but the president should have it when it is important, like traveling to Rwanda for the auspicious occasion of re-election of Paul Kagame, which is debatable. Some people are saying it was like a nomination because you wonder how somebody can be elected with 99% of the votes.
That's their own.
But that is an issue of the Rwandese to debate.
Yes.
So I think the president since June they reduced traveling to outside the country, and we are hoping it won't be as it used to be. Maybe he can reduce to have those foreign trips if and when it is important.
Yes.
Other trips we can delegate to the foreign minister and also to the deputy president,
Yes.
so that we can have some few important travels.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wakili, do you see these travels reducing, and will it speak or will it with them reducing, how will that affect the public expenditure aspects?
Well, it's debatable and it's discretionary. Again, like I always say, we can't micromanage the president and how he's going to discharge his public responsibilities. Issues that must be understood is Kenya is a sovereign nation represented by a president who out there then speaks on behalf of the people of Kenya. There are successes in the diplomacy that Ruto has taken, the presidential diplomacy, and quick wins. And there are some areas that I think he did not get it right. Now, ordinarily, presidential democracy is far much better than professional diplomacy. For the reason that whatever you pursue when you engage in presidential democracy, it means you get it at the summit, you get it at the highest point of negotiation. So if President Ruto engages with Biden or Kagame or the South African president or another president and there's something we're pursuing, if you leave it the lower professional diplomacy of the ambassadors, it may take time because of the protocols that are involved. But to break the ice and break the ceiling, it is important that the president engages in important issues. Sometimes it is a conflict between one country and the other. And ordinarily, assuming we have a problem with Somalia, and to see the Somali president and the Kenyan president engaging, the receipt, how the public receives that as opposed to a Kenyan ambassador and a Somalian ambassador getting involved is different. So sometimes if you want to hasten and probably quicken the gains and the quick wins, you must engage in presidential democracy so that the issue is crystallizes at the highest end, and then now instructions are given on the implementation. Sometimes you need to change the laws, sometimes certain documents to be signed, and so on and so forth. And every time that he travels, we've seen very many pronouncements in terms of engagements. There is now a free visa system when you go to South Africa and vice versa, making Kenya probably a visa-free, and a destination, and you get your visa at the port of landing or the airport. Brings in more tourists because of the hassle of trying to get visas and get into the country, because that's itself is a consideration when you're traveling somewhere. Do I need a visa or don't I? And then the competitive destination become options. And I think it's a good thing. So we should encourage the president in good faith, where he acts in good faith, to be able to engage in such summits, so that then we open more to the Kenyan's reputation, Kenyan's standing in the body politic of the globe. But more importantly, also try to open up ends in matters of business for Kenya. The other bit is if it is abused, and this is how it's abused.
Yes.
The planners and the handlers of the president may want to go to the US, and he'll put that in his plan. So an uncle, a cousin is put there, and many hangarounds are put there. So the people who abuse that are those that basically handle the president. In terms of including expenses that basically are not supposed to be there. You will probably, we will wait and see, but in the Olympics there has been a lot of travel of the office, the entire office, or a big part of the office of sports, and those that are handling the Olympic Committee, as opposed to, there could even have been more officers to go as opposed to even the athletes themselves.
Yes.
You get the point. So there must be a proper balance in good faith and, of course, logic. You see, if there's justification for that trip, for instance, there could be businessmen who go there to go and look for options so that then they can export. Is it avocado? Is it cashew nuts? Is it... that's possible. Yeah. But when it is abused, that I think is the clarion call and the cry of Kenyan. Kenyans have not told the president not to go. Yes. So he shouldn't fear going to engage with other presidents and other countries. What we are saying is that should not be abused. Yes. And if he went alone, by the way, if he just went alone and a few of his handlers, yes, we wouldn't have a problem. The problem is there was wastage, wanton wastage of public funds in the manner it was handled. All right,
matters of frequency. We take a short break. We'll be right back. Don't go too far. Welcome back. This is Good Morning Kenya, and we were talking about the president's travel outside, and one of the things, before we close this matters, I would want to hear from you, Bwana Mark. How is this a way for the president to balance his international engagement and also in line with what is happening in the country in terms of the economic climate?
I think you are talking about
yes,
the trips.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we are saying what the Kenyans are saying is not, they are not denying the president the opportunity to move around the country, outside the country, that is. But the frequency and also the issue of how many accompany the president has always been the issue. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the benefits of these international travels is it also improves on our relationship with these international countries. Mm-hmm. Like of recent, the president the other day was in United States of America, and that it itself, America being a superpower of the world, gave the president a platform to showcase that Kenyans is a country where we can have a good democracy. Mm-hmm. And it came just some days after, some months after the president was elected on a popular vote. So I think those travels, in one way or the other, they improve on our international relations. Yes. And also they come with some benefits of economical benefits, yeah. Because like the US and the Britain have always supported our country. Mm-hmm. And most of these deals are cut between the two presidents. Mm-hmm. Those are things that cannot be cut between the lower card of foreign minister or deputy president. Mm-hmm. So I think on the positive part of it, the country benefits when a president goes outside and meets other presidents. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, on to another aspect that revolves around the politics within the country. The president and the deputy president were in Kirinyaga over the weekend, and one of the things during last week that was in the public domain was the ouster bid of the deputy president. Something was cooking, but let me start with you. Was this an indication of waning popularity of the deputy president in the mountain?
For real, I can't tell, but what I can say is that the plan to oust up the deputy president, it's something that is unrealistic at the moment, because it can take us back as a country. Remember even the circumstances under which Gachagua came into power. You all know how it was very chaotic to appoint the deputy president, and how he has very staunch supporters in the Mount Kenya region. So even for the parliamentary committee to think of impeaching the deputy president is something that is very unrealistic. And it is something very bad that we are having these issues between the president and the deputy president, instead of them trying to iron their issues out without necessarily affecting their functions as in the public office. So I feel like concerning that plot or that plan, I don't think that it's something that even the timing is very bad. The political climate is not very conducive for such thing to happen. So maybe if we are restless, or maybe if we don't like the deputy president, maybe we can just wait until 2027. Then we can make decisive decisions.
Yeah, that story is told on page 9 of the Daily Nation. The president was reportedly worried that the DP was increasingly becoming popular amongst Mount Kenya voters. What do you think, Wakili?
I don't think so. He was very unpopular, actually. Yeah. He hadn't galvanized Mount Kenya into a vote basket, although he was playing victim.
Yes.
And I think that's in the context of appealing to the electorate, and he seemed to be talking about Mount Kenya so that he positioned himself as the defender of the community. But he hadn't gotten there yet. He's yet to get there. He has a lot of work to do and to prove himself. So, but let me put it this way.
Okay.
Article 144, 145 is on impeachment of the president. But the same article says the reasons for impeachment of the president are the same reasons for impeachment of the deputy president. Gross misconduct, incapacity, violation of the constitution, having committed a criminal act, and so on and so forth. This is what is the danger. The moment the president, because the reasons are the same. If there are reasons for the deputy president who serves in the same institution of presidency as the president, let me put it the other way. We amended our constitution so that we made the candidature of a president inseparable with that of the deputy president. So the institution of the presidency is in unison and in unity with the deputy president. Therefore, the acts of the president in the principle of collective responsibility are seen to be the same as the deputy president and vice versa. When the deputy president is seen to have grossly violated, yes, that's a personal responsibility. However, the danger is if then you can collect enough numbers in parliament and into the system and inject into the system enough infrastructure to impeach the deputy president, the same infrastructure remains a constant possibility to then impeach the president himself. So the moment you open a window for the deputy president to be impeached, you have given the same process the credibility of impeachment for the president. And this country, a week is so long, and even a month, to be able to galvanize the country into an impeachment possibility of anyone. We were at a certain level is because the parliament was not with the Gen Zs. But if they were, that was a critical moment that tested the regime. So it is very important that the deputy president continues to be sustained in power, albeit probably to be checked, for the reason that you cannot then say that which is good is good for the deputy president in the context of the unity of the institution of presidency cannot be available for the president. So it will be very dangerous to attempt such a blind attempt against the deputy president in the name of impeaching him. The second issue is I think we are going through so much already, and we are trying, probably what the president is doing is to settle the political decibels as well, having come out of the protest and involved and invited the opposition into it. Now, when the opposition comes in and you exit the deputy president, you are inviting space. You are creating space for purposes of further political gerrymandering, which then would involve, in the context of giving to the opposition an opportunity to continue to give to whoever it is that you want. And lastly, we I think, do not have the luxury at this time to unsettle the mountain. And I say that because there are protest voices generated from the mountain on account of the treatment of the deputy president, which have of course crystallized by the complaints and the voice of the deputy president. I don't think he has deputized the president sufficiently on account of the continuous seemingly packaging of statements directed at the presidency and not the president himself and the handlers of the president. That's really has been his complaint. But again, it's because of the space that is being given. His first journey, he had to face off with Musalia Mudavadi and the chief minister position and the powers that he was given. Yeah. I think that friction continued and was sustained for some time. But then something else came up after the Gen Z protests, and that's Raila Odinga. He was a very, the critical, probably the highest critical voice of Raila Odinga when he came into power with President Ruto. But it seems that he has to lower those decibels. One, because the presidency was threatened. So if the president is threatened, the deputy president himself is threatened. So he has now been saved by Raila Odinga in terms of those threats, the person he was critical about.
But others were feeling like this inclusion of the opposition into government was creating another center of power.
No, it isn't.
Yes.
It isn't because, you know, I don't know whether you've seen, I have the privilege of having seen how meetings are conducted, especially at State House. You don't talk to the president. You don't talk at the president in a cabinet meeting. He sits, and you sit in a manner of left and right. Yes. And even that sitting is hierarchical. Probably cabinet secretary, internal security, and so on and so forth. Like that. There's a way you get seated. Yes. And that should tell you where you're placed in the heart and mind of the president. Then number two is you give reports and the president will probably go at you in person. And he's very knowledgeable on what goes in those ministries. He has his own way of getting information. So it is very impossible, therefore, to say you will sit with the president. I think the bigger picture will be what Raila Odinga does with that environment will be more important than the cabinet secretaries. When the cabinet secretaries got where they become state officers. And I tell you, there's an oath to it. You must subscribe to the president. So I don't think they're going to undermine the institution of the presidency. More importantly is, in this stage of responsibilities, you report to the president, and that places you at a point where you must then listen to the voice of the president, which becomes a higher voice in the context of the hierarchy of powers in this country. Once you get into government, you are bounded to certain responsibilities, and it becomes a bounden duty and responsibility. And therefore, if you are to sustain your position, you must first be quick enough to learn that environment. Number two is you must discharge your responsibilities on account of the behest of the president, the whim of the president. And lastly, to the people of Kenya, obviously, and the constitution. So you find yourself in a position where how you speak, how you conduct, how you dress, everything you do must be confined to certain existential traditions. Suffice it to say, therefore, that liberty to undermine will not be available. Yep.
Mark, the aspect of this talk about impeaching the deputy president, and now that there is what you may call a ceasefire, how do you think that will impact the Mount Kenya politics henceforth?
I think I will start with where it all started. I think the issue of the deputy president and the president started way back, immediately after elections. You noticed after some months of elections, the Kenya Kwanza government, mostly the MPs from Rift Valley, started fronting Didi Nyoro to be an alternative of deputy president, that is Gachagua. Our reasons being that, with the setup of Kenyan politics, we liked politics too much and forget about the welfare of our people. So what was happening was some plans were being hatched about how the Kenya Kwanza government was going to win the 2027 election and who was to take over from the president at the elections of 2032. So the impeachment of the deputy president was real, and reasons behind the impeachment were not sufficient even to think about them, because the situation the deputy president is now is the same situation the president was during the term of President Uhuru. And one would have imagined the current president would not even, he even said it himself, that he was not going to put his deputy in the same situation he was. But, you know, with the politics, many times people say a politician will say something today and tomorrow he will say something different. So what happened with the impeachment, I think I will disagree with our wakili here. Gachagua was becoming popular with the mountain, with the people in the mountain, but unpopular with the majority of MPs from the mountain. And so, if you look at that situation, if you were told to pick one, you'll go with the people, because that's where the votes are.
He was becoming popular with the people.
Yes.
And unpopular
with Mount Kenya MPs.
Mount Kenya MPs.
Yes.
Question is why?
The question now comes, why? This goes back to when I was being picked. Because you remember, most of the MPs, of the youthful MPs, the likes of Ichungwa and the rest, they were fronting the CS for internal security, Kidiki. But the president had to balance, because he was looking for somebody who can, if you look at Gachagua, he's a good mobilizer. Yeah. If you compare him with Kidiki, in terms of politics, the person who can give the president more votes when it comes to mobilization and attracting some votes, definitely you go for Gachagua. So the president was looking at 2027 elections, but that time he was picking the running mates. So that's why most of the MPs were not happy with the running mate of DP Gachagua, and they did not even forgive him. So it had that had to go for some time, and it was expected, because even up to now, after even the Mount Kenya visit, which happened 2 days ago, you have seen Gachagua attacking the deputy president. That tells us that even the differences and the conflict is still not solved. So why the impeachment was stopped was because it was going to give, if it was to be done, Gachagua was going to get some sympathy votes. That would tell you the president would have lost a Mount Kenya vote. And you know, with politics, you don't leave what you have to go and look for something you are not sure. So even bringing in the ODM was not enough for the president, because with the way our politics are done, you never know. The kind of sympathy the deputy president was going to get from Mount Kenya, and even within the country, that one is something you cannot predict. So I think the reasons to why they had to drop the impeachment, one was that Gachagua was becoming very popular with the people, and even the president. I think when he visited Embu, was it Embu or Meru?
Embu and Kirinyaga.
Embu and Kirinyaga. He had some, you know, him is a politician, so I'm very sure he noticed there was some differences between the leaders. And that tells you, if we have differences within the leaders, that will escalate up to the president, and that will not mean well for his re-election. Yeah.
You want to say something? As you respond to that, I also want you to, from where you stand, do you think the Deputy President politically has gained some leverage?
Thank you, Mike. First of all, just to buttress what Mheshimiwa said on the issue about Gachagua, why Gachagua has become very popular with the people as opposed to the MPs. Maybe if I can just try to be intellectual a little bit, this ancient Greek philosopher called Plato, he came up with the two very clear, distinct concepts. That is the issue about birthright democracy and intellectual democracy. In birthright democracy is where you find the people are very ignorant, they don't have that civic education, so the politicians come, they manipulate them with all the fake promises, for their own personal aggrandizement. Now in intellectual democracy is where now the people are mature in a democracy. Remember, the concept of democracy, it was a Greek thing, it's something, it is not even our concept. It is something that, it came to us as a Western philosophy, but I'm not going there. Now, we are at a situation in a country where, and it's very sad, this thing even, it hurts me so much because we are in a state where our leaders focus so much on next elections as opposed to next generations. It's hardly even 4 years or 5 years since our leaders came into power. Yet most, if not all, they're strategizing how to win the 2027 election. And it has been a repetitive pattern. This political pedigree has haunted us for so long. This is something that, we cannot, continue to tolerate if we want, to make this country a better place and also to secure the future of our future generations. Now, regarding Gachagua gaining popularity and strength, for me, I define popularity in a different way, and also it depends on how do you define leadership. Leadership is not necessarily about exerting influence on people. Leadership is not all about, having the numbers. Because I think we need to redefine all this, to rethink leadership, to rethink democracy, to rethink all this, so that at least now we can know where we are going, to make that U-turn. Because this is where the politicians have, they have taken advantage of, in terms of exploiting, innocent Kenyans who don't have that civic education, in terms of knowing even their rights, their constitutional rights, election, what is needed in an election, what is needed in a democratic country, etc. Lastly, to answer the question you said, I will say yes, Gachagua has gained some stance, and as I said earlier, remember, I said it's very difficult for now to impeach Deputy Gachagua, and as Wakili put it very, very eloquently, that when you have plans to impeach Gachagua at the moment, it has so much political implications. It will take us backward. And remember, as he said, what if the MPs listened to the Kenyans when they were passing that Finance Bill 2024? We could not even be where we are as a country right now. So it goes back even to the issue about listening, accountability, same things. And I don't know even how to put it this way, because sometimes even I'm lost for words, because we keep speaking the same thing, and the problem is the roots. It's not about the leaves or the fruits. It's the roots, because we Kenyans, we are the ones also who elect these leaders into power for our own personal reasons. Yet when they come into power, again, because we also need to take responsibility. Yes, you blame bad governance and all that, but who elect these people into power? We are the same Kenyans. And when you go to the grassroots level, what the people say is that, it's better even to be given that 200 shillings and have that mkate, and have a bad leader than somebody who doesn't give you anything. And whether they don't care even if somebody is competent or not. So I think that is, we are in a state of limbo.
Yes. Yeah. Wakili, I wanted to, there's something he has said about once you are elected, you start campaigning for the next election. How do we remedy that?
You see, anybody who gets into power has to follow a process. And that's both a legal process and a political process.
Yes.
And therefore, anybody who gets into power of leadership is a politician.
Yeah.
The business of a politician is to have dominion over people. Therefore, if you're a politician, you must conquer and dominate.
Let me cut you short. Your microphone has run into problems. I I'll throw the same question to you. How do we remedy that? You get elected, and the next thing you think about is the next election.
Yeah, I think the problem we have in Kenya, and I think in growing democracies, is we tend to elect politicians as opposed to leaders. Because if you elect a politician, politician will always be thinking of how he's going to win the coming election. But a leader will be always thinking about how he's going to improve on the lives of the people and how he's going to improve on the management of the economic situation of the society. So that's why we miss it. And it all goes down to the voter. Because the voter will want to listen to the person who comes with sweet stories, a person who wants to tell him what he wants to hear, as opposed to getting people who have good ideas on how to run the country. Yes. So I think it's a problem which will continue as our democracy grows. But I'm sure one time we'll reach there, because we have seen democracies like America, where they elect leaders as opposed to politicians. And a good example is of recent, we had Joe Biden. When the larger voices asked him to not run, he did not even take a minute. He resigned and he endorsed his deputy the president. So I think the main problem is the politics, and this is a challenge to our leaders and politicians. Let's prioritize issues to do with the economy, issues to do with anti-corruption, and issues to do with the welfare of our people, as opposed to planning for the next election.
Okay.
Yeah.
Come back to the same point as we finish.
Yes. Let me reiterate that a politician goes into power, gains power through a legal process and a political process, and therefore there is no person who gets into power without being a politician. And the institution of politics has its dynamics. But a politician's duty, for him to exist as such, must have dominion over a people, either a ward, a sub-county, a county, or the entire country. When that happens, that dominion is pursuant to an act of a conquer on the people. So you must conquer and dominate on the people for you to be a politician in office. To conquer and dominate means, therefore, you, for whatever sheer reasons, whatever you've practiced, whatever you've done, you've emerged the winner in democracy. You've been pronounced as such. To conquer and dominate is not an act. It's an existential duty, a bounden duty on the politician. So once you get into office, you continue to conquer and dominate by acts that then gives you dominion over the people against competition. Suffice it to say, therefore, that eventually you have to package yourself with an eye to preservation, an eye to existential, the existential threat that is there. So to suppress that by either good acts, pronouncements, or whatever manner of politicking that you're going to do, at whatever level, because you're in a constant competition. So to conquer and dominate means that you continue with the process of politicking, which can't stop at any point. So the level at which, the height at which the political decibels will probably differ, as opposed to, you see, when we declare now we're going for the campaign period, the decibels are higher than in the midterm, like where we are now. But that environment to politics is ordinarily existential and a constant. But I must put it this way, that it also depends on the organization of the society as the laws are, and the competitiveness process, the intellectual input of the people. If people are intellectualized, they are more available, especially for the middle class. They are more critical, basically, on the politicians. So politicians would not also politic on account of wanting to politic. They would politic to react to an environment as available. So you and me or any other person getting into that office will meet an environment, and therefore you will become responsive to that environment. So I should say that we donate politicians to the body politic. We do not... they did not come from somewhere else, or Uganda or other countries. We donate to them, our brothers and sisters. In fact, the people born today and will be politicians. They'll be donated, they'll be nurtured by their parents, and they become politicians, and they'll go to school and be nurtured by society to become politicians. So we say in law, crime is a contribution of society through the person who commits the crime. Because there's a way you school that person to become a thief, to become this, to become... So the politician also, by parity of the same reasoning, is schooled to become what he is. The indiscipline and discipline is a contribution of society.
Yes.
I must, however, put this rider.
Yeah.
The law is this. Once you are elevated into that position, you become a state officer, you must behave in a certain way other than the ordinary.
Yeah.
And therefore, a state officer has a packaging and responsibility that befits the office and interest of that office.
Yes.
And therefore, you can't continue to have an excuse that I come from the society and I must continue to behave in a certain bad way. No. You must confine yourself to the ideals of the office in which you behold. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for making time to come on Good Morning Kenya and talking about the political landscape within the country. That is Wakili George Kithi, who is an advocate of the High Court, Honorable Mark Dingo Asante Sana, who is a governance expert and political analyst, and also Gerald Minishi, who is a political analyst. Thank you for making time. This is where we cap matters eye on politics. My name is Mike Migwe. Don't go too far. Vivian Degwa is coming back with transformative leaders. Stay with us.